military presence of the United States in the Eastern Mediterranean will serve as a deterrent on Hezbollah and the Iranians not to extend the scope of the conflict. Hezbollah has been provoking Israel in the north, and we right now have a sort of low-intensity skirmishes, clashes on the border. Hopefully, this will not go beyond that. And for an American president to arrive in Israel when Israel is being criticized throughout the region. Just now, the Jordanians canceled, Jordanians, Palestinians, and the Egyptians canceled the planned summit with the president. So he's paying a price. What pressure he can bring to bear? I think that he may try to deter. Really, what the message is more to Hezbollah and Iran than to Netanyahu, I believe. He would expect that the military presence of the United States in the Eastern Mediterranean will serve as a deterrent on Hezbollah and the Iranians not to extend the scope of the conflict. Hezbollah has been provoking Israel in the north, and we right now have a sort of low-intensity skirmishes, clashes on the border. Hopefully, this will not go beyond that. So this is essentially the message, I believe, one of support for the objective of bringing Hamas, if not defeat it, really disarming it and make possible a future handing over of the Gaza Strip to the Palestinian Authority. Without that, it would be extremely difficult to restart some sort of a political process between Israelis and Palestinians.
Do you think it is possible to have any sort of peace process involving a terrorist organization like Hamas?
I don't believe so, frankly. I don't think that there is such a possibility at all. Hamas is not in the business of a two-state solution. It's not in the business of any kind of reconciliation. Ideologically, they can't sustain it. And in fact, the objectives, I would say, of Hamas, and they have political objectives, unlike Israel, unlike the Netanyahu government that is reacting to an initiative that came from a violent initiative that came from Hamas. Israel doesn't have a political objective, and this is very wrong, to be in a war with no political horizon, whereas Hamas has objectives. One of them is, for example, to assert its hegemony on the national Palestinian movement, to sideline the moderate, secular Palestinian Authority, to bring about the exchange of prisoners, which in Hamas political mythology, as it were, is a central element, and also present itself as the ultimate protector of the holy places of Islam, under the premise that Israel is trying to change the status quo on the esplanade of the holy site. So these are the objectives. None of them includes, okay, let us bring the Israelis to their knees so we can start a peace process of any sort. They are not in the business of a peace arrangement.
Yeah. Just on the, I mean, clearly
not the Netanyahu government. That the current Netanyahu government was in the business of any viable peace process. I do acknowledge it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, I mean, clearly a lot of the focus today is on what exactly happened at the hospital in Gaza, where we think at least 500 people have been killed. The Hamas has blamed Israel. Israel have said it wasn't them. Let's just take a listen from the Israeli Defense Force spokesman, Daniel Hagari, just speaking earlier.
At 6:59 p.m., a barrage of around 10 rockets was fired by Islamic Jihad from a nearby cemetery. It was at the time that 6:59 p.m. when there were reports of an explosion at the Hayel in Gaza City. According to our intelligence, Hamas checked the reports, understood it was an Islamic Jihad rocket that had misfired, and decided to launch a global media campaign to hide what really happened. They went as far as inflating the numbers of casualties. They understood with absolute certainty that it was a rocket misfired by Islamic Jihad.
Now, we've seen, I mean, claims and counterclaims, tweets which have been posted and then deleted. In the last hour, we've had Joe Biden, the US president, saying he thinks the other team, telling Israel the other team are responsible for this. How everyone in this should be careful, shouldn't they? Because the problem is when people put things out without getting the facts straight, it only fuels the idea that this is the people aren't telling the truth, that there are both sides are not being straight. Would you urge the Israeli government in particular to show some restraint in this and to wait for the facts?
But to begin with, let us address this particular case. It's not a question of claims and counterclaims. The Israelis have presented the recording of a telephone conversation between two Hamas militants. You can see it, and you can hear it, and you can Google the translation if you wish. But this is a very clear proof that what happened. I mean, and this is not the first time that Hamas rockets misfire. You see, there is a Pavlovian instantaneous reaction that comes from certain circles that I see it, frankly, as a sort of post-colonial guilt complex in which you develop this patronizing attitude that assumes that the weaker side can never be wrong. The colonized is always, or the former colonized is always to be right. I mean, this create this sort of attitude of moral equivalence or moral balance that always lays the blame on the usual suspect. The usual suspect needs to be the stronger power, and in this case, it's always Israel. But here are the proofs. I know that the far left, the utterly ignorant students of Harvard, the elite university, that even before Israel started to retaliate, they blamed Israel for the barbaric attack of Hamas.
Yeah,
I think this represents a major crisis of the so-called progressive mind. Does this justify the massive Israeli attack? I mean, these are two different things.
Yeah.
You can criticize the massive Israeli attack, and you can criticize the barbarism of Hamas at the same time. The human mind can do these two things at the same time.
I think that's a really, really
doesn't
important
have
point.
to be mutually exclusive.
Lots of people try to hold those two views at the same time. Just finally, with your past as a foreign minister, does Britain have any role to play in this? Any purchase in the region? Any ability to, at some point, like you said, unfortunately, this situation is going to get worse before it gets better. Is there any role for Britain in trying to bring about some sort of peace in the region?
Well, I think that Britain, of all European countries, and perhaps also Germany, has taken a position that is the closer position to the US. I always believed that for a European power to have any effective leverage on the process among Israelis and Palestinians, or Israelis and Arabs as a whole, it needs to do it in a coalition, in a diplomatic coalition with the United States.
Yeah.
Over the year, the Americans have developed alliances for war in the Middle East, and the UK was always an ally since the George W. Bush years. it is about time to create an alliance between America, the UK, and key European powers, and key Arab states, by the way, that are willing to do so in order to bring about some sort of a political solution in the region, for just for a change, not a coalition for war in Afghanistan or Iraq, but a coalition for peace between Israelis and Palestinians, because leaving these two parties to their own devices will lead nowhere. History tells it.
Yeah.
We need major brokers, and such an alliance can be the way to start or to restart this comatose peace process between Israelis and Palestinians.
We'll have to leave it there for now. But thanks so much. Really appreciate your time today. Shlomo Ben Ami, a former Israeli foreign minister and vice president of the Toledo International Centre for Peace. Thanks very much for joining us on Times Radio this morning. We'll, of course, keep across the meeting that Joe Biden's having with Benjamin Netanyahu this morning. Let's just come